My name is Julian Mercer. I'm 32 years old, an independent photographer based in Asheville, North Carolina. I've built my business from nothing. Weddings, wildlife, magazine spreads, the kind of work that pays the bills and keeps me creatively fulfilled. But to my mother-in-law, Diane, and father-in-law, Gerald, what I do will never be enough. Gerald is an investment banker who measures success in square footage and stock options. Diane plays the role of the perfect society wife, always dressed to impress, always smiling through gritted teeth when she introduces me at family events as the photographer. But I used to bring expensive wine to dinners, show them published photos, mention high-profile clients. It never changed their minds. They saw me as a passing phase, a distraction, not worthy of their daughter, Haley. Last Christmas, I overheard Diane on the phone. Haley could have married Thomas, you know? Orthopedic surgeon. Family money. But she chose the creative one. That pause before creative made it sound like a disease. 6 months later, we were invited to Diane's birthday dinner. She greeted us warmly, hugged Haley, kissed her cheek. Then she turned to me. "Julian," she said with a smile, "I made something special for you." In her hand was a glass of sangria. Her eyes darted around the kitchen before offering it to me. I took it politely, but I didn't drink. Later, when no one was watching, I swapped the glass with Gerald's. 45 minutes later, Gerald was pale, sweating, and rushing to the bathroom. Diane's face went white. She knew. And so did I. Something had shifted inside me. The anger wasn't hot or explosive. It was cold, deliberate. The photographer I met Haley 6 years ago at an art exhibition where my work was featured. She was finishing her master's in environmental science, and I was just starting to make a name for myself. We connected instantly. She understood my need to capture the world through a lens, and I admired her passion for protecting it. Her parents were another story. From our first meeting, Gerald made it clear he had expected someone different for his daughter. Someone with a desk job, a retirement plan, a company car, someone exactly like him. Diane was subtler. She'd praise my photos while asking when I planned to settle into something stable. She'd invite me to family functions, then introduce me as the photographer instead of her son-in-law. For years, I tried to win them over. I brought expensive wine to dinner, showed them published work, mentioned high-profile clients. Nothing changed. Their perception of me never shifted. I was just passing through their daughter's life, a phase she'd grow out of. The breaking point came last summer. We were trying for a baby. Excited, nervous, hopeful. When we told Gerald, he pulled me aside. "Children are expensive, son. Maybe think about real employment before bringing one into the world." I smiled, shook his hand, complimented Danny's cooking, and kept my thoughts to myself. But there were signs I should have taken more seriously. The way Diane would ask Haley to help in the kitchen whenever I talked about a successful project. How she'd accidentally exclude me from family photos. The time Gerald suggested therapy for Haley's impulsive decisions while looking directly at me. I ignored it all, thinking time would eventually bring acceptance. I was wrong. The drink that changed everything. The Friday of Diane's birthday dinner. I returned from Montana with raw wind, burned cheeks, and a memory card full of images that would pay our mortgage for 3 months. I was bone-tired, but I showered, put on a button-down shirt, and drove us to her parents' house in Lakeview Heights, the upscale part of town. Dinner started normally. Gerald bragged about a recent deal. Diane fussed over the table settings. Haley's brother Owen and his wife Vanessa made polite conversation. I nursed a beer and counted the minutes until we could leave. After the main course, Diane announced she'd made her famous sangria for dessert. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I offered to help carry glasses. That's when I saw it. She had 2 glasses separate from the others. As I entered, she quickly added something from a small vial into one of them. It wasn't a garnish or flavor. It was colorless, odorless. She tucked the vial away the moment she heard my footsteps. "Oh, Julian," she said too brightly. "I've got this. This one's for you. Special recipe for my favorite son-in-law." I thanked her politely and took both glasses. In the dining room, Gerald was checking his phone, barely looking up when I approached. "Sangria, sir?" I asked, placing the tampered glass in front of him instead of taking it myself. He drank without hesitation. 45 minutes later, Gerald was pale, sweating, clutching his stomach, and stumbling to the bathroom. The violent sounds of his illness echoed through the house. Diane's face drained of color when she realized what had happened. Her eyes met mine across the table, and in that moment, I knew two things with absolute certainty. My mother-in-law had tried to poison me. She knew that I knew. I didn't react, didn't confront her. Just ate my chocolate cake while Haley rushed to check on her father. In the chaos that followed, Gerald insisting it must have been food poisoning, Diane stammering about bad shellfish, I quietly pocketed the untouched glass meant for me. Something had shifted inside me. The anger I felt wasn't hot or explosive. It was cold, deliberate. I wasn't just going to let this go. But I wasn't going to fight their way either. I was going to make them face exactly who they were. The cold truth. The Monday after the dinner, I took the glass to Jason, a former client who ran a forensic lab. Personal or professional? He asked when I explained what I needed. Family matter, I replied. 3 days later, he called. Julian, there were benzodiazepines in that drink. Nothing lethal, but enough to knock someone out for hours. Maybe cause some memory loss. I thanked him and asked for a written report. That night, I told Haley I wanted to skip Sunday dinner for a while. Said I needed to focus on an upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed but understood. I didn't tell her everything yet. I needed more information first. Over the next 2 weeks, I dug deeper. Diane had a prescription for Xanax from 3 different doctors. She'd been doubling and tripling her doses for years. There were rumors about her in town. Strange behavior at parties. Accusations of stealing jewelry at her country club, stories her family had worked hard to bury. I compiled everything and waited for my moment. It came when Haley mentioned her mother needed photos for a social media profile. She specifically asked if you would take them. Haley said, surprised by the request. I agreed. The following Saturday, I arrived at their house alone. Camera bag in one hand, a sealed envelope in the other. Diane was waiting, dressed expensively. Makeup perfect. I thought you might want to see this, I said quietly, handing her the envelope containing the toxicology report along with printouts of her multiple prescriptions. Her hands trembled as she read. This is absurd, she whispered. We both know what happened, I said calmly. What I don't know is why. Her face hardened. You're not good enough for my daughter. You never will be. A man should provide security, not pictures. And drugging your daughter's husband provides security. She snapped back. It wasn't going to hurt you, just make you sick. Make you miss that ridiculous gallery opening you've been talking about for months. Show Haley that you're unreliable. I let that sink in. Here's what happens next, I said finally. You're going to tell Gerald what you did. Then you're both going to start treating me with respect. Not because you've suddenly changed your minds about me, but because the alternative is Haley finding out exactly who her parents are. She laughed, but it cracked halfway through. You think you can destroy me? No, I said, standing. I think I can finally protect myself. I left without taking a single photo. The fallout that night, Diane called Haley in tears, claiming I'd behaved inappropriately during our session. Said I'd been hostile and threatening. When Haley confronted me, I couldn't hide the truth anymore. I showed her everything. The lab report, the prescriptions, text messages from Diane calling me a coy distraction. She didn't speak for a long time. I used to think Thomas was the right one, she whispered. Mom and Dad convinced me he was cheating. He tried to explain, but by then, I didn't trust him anymore. The pattern was clear now. This wasn't just about me. It was about control. Complete control over their daughter's life. And they'd been doing it for years. The hidden files Vanessa, Owen's wife, sent me a USB drive. Home security footage from Diane and Gerald's house. There was Diane in the kitchen, clearly adding something to a drink. There was me entering, taking the glasses. There was Gerald drinking from the tampered glass. But there was more. Footage from after we'd left. Diane screaming at Gerald, blaming him for drinking from the wrong glass. Gerald yelling back. This isn't the first time you've done something like this. Another file showed Deanne and Gerald arguing 2 days after the dinner. "He knows what you did," Gerald said. "So what?" Diane replied. "It's his word against mine. Haley will never choose him over family. And if she does, then she's not the daughter I raised." She continued, coldly. "Don't worry. I've already started talking to her about their marriage problems. Planting seeds. By the time I'm done, she'll be filing for divorce and thinking it was her idea." I shut my laptop, hands shaking. This wasn't just about me. This was a systematic effort to control Haley's life, to isolate her from anyone who didn't fit their vision, and they'd been doing it for years. The pattern revealed. I reached out to Thomas. He sent me emails between him and Haley, showing how Diane and Gerald had systematically undermined their relationship. I contacted other ex-boyfriends, old friends of Haley's who'd mysteriously drifted away. A pattern emerged. Anyone who encouraged Haley's independence was gradually pushed out of her life. Vanessa provided more security footage showing Deanne and Gerald discussing their plans for us. "Once they divorce, we'll convince her to move back home," Gerald said in one clip. "She can run the foundation, meet suitable men." I compiled everything onto a single drive. Then I invited Owen and Vanessa over for dinner. Without telling Hallie, I was about to destroy her family's image. The final meeting the next morning, Diane called. Haley put her on speaker. "Darling, I was thinking you should come stay with us for a while." Diane said cheerfully, "Your father and I are worried about your marriage. Separation can give clarity." "Mom," Haley interrupted. "I've seen the videos." Silence. "What videos?" "The security footage of you drugging Julian's drink, of you and Dad plotting to break up my marriage." Another pause. "Haley, whatever he's shown you has been manipulated. You know Julian has always been jealous of our family, Ba." "Stop," Haley said firmly. "We're coming over tonight, all of us. Owen, Vanessa, Julian, and me. We're going to talk about this. As a family, no more lies." After she hung up, Haley turned to me. "They'll deny everything. They'll try to turn this around on you." "Ah? I know. So what's our plan?" For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "I think it's time your parents met the real me. The one who doesn't just take photos, but knows how to tell a story." The reckoning that night, we arrived at Gerald and Diana's house. Gerald seemed confident. "I understand there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I interrupted. "I'm documenting this conversation for the family archives." Diane objected immediately. "This is private family business, Daw." "Exactly," I agreed. "Family business. And I'm family, even though you've tried very hard to change that." For the next 2 hours, we laid it all out. The drink, the manipulation, Thomas, the other ex-boyfriends, the pattern that had shaped Haley and Owen's entire lives. Gerald and Diane denied everything, of course, called me unstable, manipulative. But with each denial, I played another clip, showed another email. Their faces grew paler, their denials weaker. Finally, Haley stood up. "I love you both. You're my parents. But what you've done is unforgivable. You don't get to control my life anymore." Owen nodded. "We're adults. We choose our own partners, our own path." Diane started crying, not from remorse, but from the realization that she was losing control. Gerald just looked stunned, as if he couldn't comprehend that his children were defying him. As we prepared to leave, I handed Gerald a USB drive. "These contains everything. The footage, the emails, the testimonies. It's yours to keep." What's that supposed to mean?" he asked suspiciously. "It means that I'm not going to ruin your reputation by sharing this with anyone else." That would hurt Haley, and I would never do that. I paused. "But if you ever try to interfere in our marriage again, if you ever try to manipulate Haley or speak against me, copies will go to every member of your country club, your business partners, and your precious social circle." For the first time since I'd met him, Gerald looked at me with something resembling respect. "I underestimated you?" "Wes," I said simply. "You did." By healing and new beginnings, 6 months passed. Haley and Owen began therapy to process the damage their parents had caused. Diane and Gerald kept their distance, sending occasional texts but respecting the boundaries we'd established. Then, over the holidays, They invited us all to dinner, a fresh start. Haley wanted to go. Still my parents, she said. And they're trying. I agreed. But I wasn't naive. When we arrived, everything seemed normal. Diane had prepared a feast. Gerald was charming, asking about my latest projects with what appeared to be genuine interest. After dinner, Gerald invited me into his study. "I've been thinking about your career," he said, pouring me a scotch. "Photography as well. It's been good to you. But have you considered diversifying? I could bring you into my firm. Junior partner track. The salary would be substantial." I took the glass but didn't drink. "Why would you do that?" "Your family," he said smoothly. "And I respect how you handled the unpleasantness. You protected my daughter while standing your ground. That's what a real man does." I set the glass down. "I appreciate the offer, but no," his smile tightened. "Julian, be reasonable. This is an olive branch, a way for us to move forward." "No," I repeated. "It's another attempt at control. You can't buy me, Gerald, and you can't stand the fact that Haley loves me exactly as I am." He dropped the facade. "Everyone has a price." I stood. "That's where you're wrong. And that's why you'll never understand your daughter." A new chapter begins. Haley announced she was pregnant. Diane rushed to embrace her daughter with tears in her eyes. Gerald approached more slowly, glancing between Haley and me. "Congratulations," he said stiffly. "Thank you," I replied. Then, lowering my voice, "This child will never be a pawn in your games. I promise you that." He nodded once. He understood the message. The gift, 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from Gerald's attorney. Inside was a deed to our house, the one we'd been renting, and legal documents establishing a trust fund for our unborn child. No note, no conditions, just the transfer of assets, clean, irrevocable. It wasn't an apology, but it was recognition, respect, perhaps, acknowledgement that I was successful. On my own terms. Eliza, our daughter, was born in the summer. We named her Lisa. When Diane and Gerald came to the hospital, they brought gifts but maintained a respectful distance. They held her briefly, took photos, left without trying to give us parenting advice or financial lectures. Months passed. Our relationship with them settled into something resembling normalcy. They never apologized, but they stopped trying to control Haley's life or undermine mine. Living well one evening, as I edited photos in my studio, Haley came in carrying Eliza. My mother called. "She wants us to come for Christmas." "Da, what do you want to do?" "I think we should go, but with conditions. We stay at a hotel. We leave when we want. No unsupervised time with Eliza." I nodded. "Sounds reasonable." 2 weeks later, a large envelope arrived from Gerald. Inside was a glossy brochure for his company's annual report. My photographs were featured throughout. Landscapes, portraits, architectural shots. The work I'd done on my own terms. There was a brief note: "Hired the best photographer I know. Thought you'd want a copy." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something: recognition. Respect. The gallery spring came. I opened my own gallery in downtown Asheville. At the grand opening, Haley stood beside me, Eliza on her hip. My parents flew in from Oregon, friends, clients. Even Diane and Gerald came. They didn't stay long. Diane held Eliza briefly under Haley's watchful eye. Gerald shook my hand, nodded at the photographs with genuine approval, and left without making any suggestions about how I should run my business. Final reflections later that night, as we sat on our porch watching the stars come out over the mountains, Eliza asleep in her crib upstairs, I realized something I'd never fully articulated before. I hadn't won by playing Gerald and Diane's game. I'd won by refusing to play it at all. I'd stood my ground, protected what mattered, built my life according to my own definition of success. Not with schemes or manipulation, but with honesty and quiet persistence. In the end, that was the most satisfying revenge of all. Living well, on my own terms, with the family I loved beside me.